I'm here with Al and Jan Landis. Yes, they're my parents. Cat's out of the bag. So they're meeting with us today. They've been married for 47 years. Tell our listeners how you guys got started in your relationship.
Well, I think like any young couple, we got into a relationship with no experience and with expectations that may not have been what they should have been.
How old were you when you got together?
Too young. I was almost 20, and Al was 20.
But she's talking about marriage.
Yeah.
So at 14, she caught my eye. Whatever kind of relationship that is at 14. But I just kind of stared at her for 4 years during high school. And we didn't get to know each other until our senior year. But that would be the beginning of a relationship as two 17-year-old teenagers.
When did you become aware of that he was stalking you?
Not until our senior year. And I just thought he was fun and funny and handsome, and that's about it. I didn't have any expectations of him because I didn't know he was interested for the longest time. So, in fact, I thought we were kind of adversaries.
Yeah. So there was a three-year teenage relationship, dating and the prom and that kind of stuff, and then the steady, and then there was a 7-month engagement when we were 19.
Yeah. And for me, I came in with a lot of baggage, I would say, and the expectations for me was that there weren't marriages that were good, and I was not going to get stuck in a marriage where there was no joy and love and happiness. So my expectation when I went into the marriage was that this probably wouldn't work and I needed to have an out.
Starts with a great expectation.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What was your expectations?
Well, my expectations were that coming from a family that was divorced, that was not an option for me. So I was married for life. And if anything changed, I loved her at the altar. I was that kind of guy where I loved her at the altar. And if anything changes, I'll let you know. and nothing had changed in my mind ever.
So you were going into it with experiencing divorce from your upbringing, and that's not an option, not going to happen for you.
Right.
You were going into it, your parents were married, but you didn't see, you didn't have an outlook of marriage as something that was really permanent. Is that right?
It was permanent. It just wasn't happy, and that wasn't
Gotcha.
That wasn't gonna be my life, and I definitely wasn't gonna bring children into that life.
Okay, so
I needed to make sure that life was happy before I brought a child into it.
Gotcha. So you had an expectation that there wasn't happiness or fulfillment in marriage, and if you were going to stick it out, you would have to find that. Otherwise, you wouldn't. You kind of didn't plan to stick it out if it wasn't that you could find that happiness or fulfillment in it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people go into marriage that way. They nowadays. This is just a temporary thing. If it fits my needs, then I'll stay with it.
Yeah, I think so. Well, as you're aware, we focus on helping couples increase intimacy, connection, and fulfillment by teaching them how to design and build a dream marriage. So we have a book coming out that's called Dream Marriage, and in it we talk about the path to intimacy and fulfillment starts with attitude. And I'm going to have you guys kind of focus on attitude. Obviously, requires somewhat of a good attitude to stick it out for 47, 48 years, right? So, but the rest of that path is, so from attitude, we talk about awareness, understanding each other, understanding self. We talk about acceptance and having acceptance for self and my spouse. Attraction, got to have attraction, and awakening, which is really just about all the things that go into kind of enlightenment, spiritual awakening, self-actualization, and that kind of thing. So again, I want to have you guys focus on attitude, but first I want to read an excerpt from our book, Dream Marriage. It says, if your life's mission and passion becomes serving, loving, contributing, and growing your spouse, You must grow as a person to do that. You can't lead someone somewhere you haven't been, and you can't serve someone in a meaningful way without having the skill or knowledge to do so. This puts the onus of achieving the dream marriage back on you. Now, if both partners are taking this challenge simultaneously, you will have an extraordinary and passionate marriage, period. These are those couples who grow old together and still act like teenagers when they're with each other. These people have success and fulfillment no matter how rich or prestigious they are. And I chose that excerpt because you guys have been around for a while. You've experienced different things, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that or your response to what I just read.
Definitely, we have a lot of past to look back on, and attitude certainly changes during different ages and stages. Because I can remember as a teenager, it was just like jaw-dropping, staring at this girl. But then being married at the ripe old age of, we were both about 20, there's still a lot of growing up to do. So the attitude was growing up together was, you don't have this plan, so we were both maturing as adults at a different pace in our 20s. So the attitude was kind of touchy at times, without it going into specifics that I can't think of right now, but just that I think that's it. One of us was aging adult, becoming more adult-like before the other one. And working different shifts during that time too, contact of these two maturing adults only on the weekends. That was kind of a weird stage to be through.
And that
for
was
7
like
years.
Through your 20s?
Yeah, for 7 years we're working different shifts and then the weekends together, and so we were still teenagers basically on the weekends.
Yeah, we were growing up separately.
Yeah, pretty much.
And because
No
we
plan.
worked different hours, we were winging it, and we were growing more with other people because of our work.
Right.
I mean, so our interaction with
Co-workers.
other adults, for the most part, I would say 90% of the week was with other adults, and then on the weekend we would be together and had different views on how life should look at that time.
Right.
And so there was lots of talks about being together and doing things together. Because again, we came young people into this, so we're into our own life and doing our own thing and having fun with our friends.
Okay. So I'm hearing that you guys were, one way of saying it, hold on, I'm going to pause there and take care of this dog. I hit the table so it'd be an easy place to
Okay.
edit.
We got to get to our life now, I guess. I think that's what I heard him saying.
Well, but our story is nothing without getting to the 7-year mark.
Yeah, I know.
And then the line in the sand type experiences. So with what was just said, then at 7 years, work dynamics changed. We were both working the same shifts, and we're almost like strangers, 24/7.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That could be that recommitment thing.
All right.
So we were just saying with what we just said, a line in the sand time is the 7th year where our work shifts became the same.
Okay.
And we found out we'd become two strangers.
Okay, so come back to that. I'm going to kind of summarize what I was hearing.
Okay.
All right, so what I'm hearing from you guys, and I'm going to say it a little different, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you both were, there was some immaturity, there was some definite kind of more egocentric, self-centered two individuals that happened to be married, but weren't necessarily figuring out how to blend that life together. Or certainly you're probably serving your own needs rather than being spouse focused. So tell about that.
But we only know that now because we look back on it. At
Sure.
the time, you don't know any different. I mean, I look back at that, it was just ignorance. No life experience and no relationship experience. So we, as she said, winging it.
Well, I think most couples probably start out that way. It's,
Exactly.
You know,
So-
nothing wrong. It's just how it is, right?
As a couple older folks now, we can say we were there. We know what the first years were like.
Well, when did you like start to see things change? Was there a shift?
It was right around year 7. The work shifts, we talked about the work shifts being different. Well, I worked nights until that year and then went to days. And all of a sudden, we had 24/7 together for 7 days a week. And those first 7 years were, like I said, becoming adults separately. And now, we were kind of like intruding on each other's time. That had become private time or time for ourselves. And
So you guys had 7 years of this kind of doing your own thing,
Sure.
and all of a sudden 7 years have gone by, and you think probably everything's great, and then you realize, wait a second, who are you? And this is my space, this is my time, this is my world, and all of a sudden you guys start seeing
Yeah.
each other all the time.
And that's what had happened.
Everything was great in our own world.
And I loved it on the weekends.
Yeah.
Now I gotta love you Monday through Friday too.
Yeah.
So obviously a lot of our couples can relate to that. What was the the worst part of that? And how did you like grow out of that? I mean, what do they need to know from your experience?
We grew out of that through trauma.
Yeah, the trauma being, well, you were born in the 5th year, so we had a couple years of being a parent. But
So you had a little toddler, a perfect little
Yes,
toddler, though, right?
Yeah, he was adorable.
and at that time, the stress, new baby, new jobs, and all the time spending together, relationship really became strained, and all of a sudden she decided she didn't love me anymore. So that was a time of trauma. For me, it came out of nowhere, but for her, I'd let her describe it, but she had tried a lot of times to fix wounds that I had created, and I chose to pretty much ignore those wounds she kept bringing up.
Well, obviously, you didn't have the best mindset going into it, right? So that
That's
obviously
right.
colored everything that happened after that. But yeah, what was your experience?
So I did try to fix things. Even on the weekends, when we saw each other on the weekends, I would let him know this isn't working.
And what was it specifically? I mean, there's probably a lot of
Just,
wives that are in that place. What
a
was it
lot
for you?
of the sports, he's doing his thing. And when we were home, the responsibility of the home, because it was my home, not our home, was mine, and I wanted him to share in that responsibility, so there was a little bit of that. But again, I came into it thinking I'm not going to stay in something that is unhappy. I'm not
So
going to spend my life this way.
It was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, well, here it is. This is the time. This is the expectation I had. We've hit it. We had good 7 years, and it's obviously not meeting my needs. I'm out.
Well, and it could be too. What you focus on, that's what you start seeing.
Yeah.
And that was my expectation. So that's what I focused on. I think I was looking a lot of the time for things to go wrong, because I was watching for that, because I didn't want that to happen. But then when you focus on that, that's what you see.
Right.
You don't see the good. So basically, I was saying, nope, done with this. Moving on.
That is so important. What you look for, what your assumption is, or your presupposition is what you're going to be able to find, and what you're going to find evidence for. And I know that our couples that we work with, that's just huge.
So we separated, and then all of a sudden this person that I didn't really know anymore was being the person that I wanted him to be.
Okay, let's come back to that, because I know you want to say something.
Yeah, because when I look back now, she coming in, I didn't know her attitude when we got married, and she didn't know mine. But
You guys didn't have this perfect communication before you got married?
no, we did not.
No. And we didn't go to any
Because
marriage prep or anything.
Yeah.
Because we've learned now, we both bring our own suitcases full of stuff, and hers was, during those first 7 years, she needed to be reassured all the time. I wasn't that guy.
You weren't a
I brought my
person to
suitcase
share.
that I brought from my upbringing. There was no physical contact. We didn't hug. We didn't say I love yous. We didn't do any of that. So she needed just the opposite. But we were unknowledgeable on how to fix that. We just kept living with the way we were brought up. So the shock of hearing she didn't love me anymore was like a kick in the gut. It was just like, wow, whatever I'm doing, I thought I was doing okay, but apparently I'm not. So that was the awakening to what do you really want? I wasn't hearing you right, apparently.
So for you, it's almost like your identity and it was in you're doing just fine. All of a sudden, you find out that's not true. Now you have an identity crisis.
I was working hard, supporting a family, playing sports still, big good at sports, and
Lots of significance and fun and connection there.
yeah, everything was hunky dory in my little world.
So you were saying then what happened? He became.
So we
after you
separated.
After we separated, he started being that person that I wanted him to be. I still considered him my best friend, which was interesting. I mean, I really, during that time, I wanted to talk to my best friend about all the things that I was feeling, but I couldn't. Couldn't talk to that person.
Wow.
I mean, when we got married, I considered him my best friend.
You before you got married, did you have that opportunity to talk with him a lot as your?
Oh,
best
yeah,
friend?
you know.
So did something change after? Just
Well,
lives got busy, is that right?
Lives got busy and separate, and we didn't talk.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I think it might. When I'm thinking on it, going back to dating, you have those
times.
conversations, and that's what the first 7 years were. The weekends were dating time. We were still dating on the weekends, not seeing each other during the week. So those conversations that she needed were few and far between. She needed them every day. I would maybe be available for those conversations a few hours on the weekends to be intimately talking.
Well, and then too, the time of that, historically, people were getting out of marriages all the time.
Yeah.
So the people that I did
70s.
talk to, they're like, well, leave him. You don't need that. McDonald's, have it your way, or no, is that Burger King? I don't know.
That was
Anyway.
also the beginning of a stage, 60s and 70s, where if it wasn't working out, you didn't fight for it either.
No.
It was just go get your attorneys and end this. And another thing during that seven-year stretch was she became a mom, so she was finding her need in
My significance was through our son.
Our son, yeah.
And I poured everything into him because that's where I got my significance. Yeah.
And again, this is all looking back. I wish we had all this knowledge then.
Sure.
It would have been a lot easier to fix.
Yeah.
Winging it is a key thing, and that's what we did
Yeah.
with failure.
Sometimes I wish that we didn't have to go through the pain. I look back on that time as a very painful time. Yes, we got a lot out of it, and we've come through it, and we've learned a lot. But if I could go back and get rid of the pain and still learn what I've learned, but I don't know that you can.
Well, and so for the rest of your marriage, you've drawn from that time.
Yeah, we don't ever want that to happen again.
Yeah, there was definitely that seventh year was definitely a line in the sand being drawn, and we both were people of faith before, and raised differently, but not really walking any strong faith. But that time was the first time I was actually on my knees talking to God. Like, I need to change. What needs to happen here? And it wasn't an enlightening time for me. I really felt that I was getting answers spiritually or divine guidance during that time, and that God was also opening her heart to hear my words, probably the first time.
Yeah.
How
So
deeply I really did feel.
the one event that happened, you talk about God's intervention, our wheels off of our car were stolen. So
While we were separated.
While we were separated. So insurance-wise, we had to get together and work on a problem together.
How long were you separated at this point?
About 2 months.
A month or two, yeah.
Yeah. And I always think back to that time. God threw us together during that time. We had to work together. And for me, too, I'm a person that likes to work on problems, and I like to work with another person on those problems. So that was a perfect venue to see this person that I had lost touch with in another light.
Well, what she left out was a lot of the story. I wake up that morning, I go out to the car to go to work, briefcase in hand, and the car's up on bricks and there's no tires or wheels. And what do I need to do? I call my friend, her, and we spent the day together. We had to go get wheels and tires. She helped me put them on the car, hurt her back doing it, ended up being laid up, and then she needed a caretaker. That was me.
Yeah. The doctor said, you need to be on your back and have somebody take care of you. Well, I didn't have anybody except my best friend from way back when.
So we were always glad and thanked God that he stole the tires off the car.
But, you know, that was important, though, because we worked together on a problem. And that was
a turning point.
One of the things that we've learned from that, I think, is it's us against the world. We're the team. And working together as a team and that's a focus. If we keep always going back to that, but we're the team, you know, like here's this problem, but we are together against that and working together to solve that problem.
Yeah, that's a good attitude to have as a couple, as we're a team, right? And so your we're a team concept, that was something you both kind of talked out, or where did that come from?
I think we just winged it.
We're still winging it, but it was a little more difference, motion-wise and connection-wise. But it wasn't a knowledge that we had. It was just a turn that we were adapting to.
Okay.
That's something we tell other married people, though, is all the time is, you guys are the team. Yeah. You work together, and you make decisions together, and that will hold you together.
So if you want to advance, so that after that line in the sand, we made a commitment at that time, we'll not get to this point again.
Right.
So everything was on the path of how do we make this work? We have a new enlightenment. And it wasn't overnight. We had what we call our desert experience of a little over a decade. Yeah. Just still winging it, but with some kind of goal or design in mind.
Well, and we were searching out. We were trying to search out. We didn't have the example growing up. Neither one of us. So we didn't know what to do. So we tried to search out to get answers to help us grow together and understand each other.
We were exploring things at church and going to church together for the first time, but we needed organizations like this. There was no marriage group help in any way, shape, or form that we were aware of back in those days. So
you were kind of on your own trying to figure this out and seeking.
We would maybe watch a TV show or read a book or fall over and pick ourselves up and dust ourselves off and see what we learned from it. But
so tell me about, so I understand your attitude going into the marriage, and then after this
event.
What did you call it before? Trauma. And I know our listeners can relate to trauma in the relationship, and then kind of put some context around the attitude. I mean, you talked about we're a team, and you've said you wing it a lot, but what was that attitude? I mean, if you could put some words around it that you had for that 10-year period.
It's not adversarial. And I think that's really a good word, because before we were two individuals fighting for what we wanted. Now and after that, and what I think we learned during that time is it's not he and I. That's when I say team, I mean it's not he and I against each other. It's us even trying to solve a problem that might be our problem. We're not trying to fight against each other. We're trying to grow together and learn the best way to do something. So the attitude there is not adversarial. It's partnership.
So we have a issue, we have a challenge, we have this life event. How are we going to get through this?
Yeah.
There's not a you and me anymore. There's a we're doing this together, so we better figure it out together.
And for my part, it's not, I'm going to get out of it. If he doesn't come up to my expectation, I can leave. That's not there anymore.
Okay.
Right, and plus, now we're getting into our 30s, and we're a little more mature, and we decided to, and because of the work schedule and raising a son, we become a family, and looking at goals and planning for the future for not only ourselves but for our child. So, it was just a little more united, and it's a different age when we look back now, another age and stage where you need tools. And I would say during those times, becoming an adult, we started looking at the baggage we brought in for the first time, and
was there a
emptying
point
the suitcases
where you first realized, oh wait, here's a baggage?
Yeah.
Has that been there the whole time? Oh yeah, it has.
Your baggage has always annoyed me. Mine's good. We started realizing in our maturity that we do have this baggage, and how are we going to combine our suitcases? That was the first time.
One thing too, I remember that, I don't even remember the name of the book, but there was a book we were reading, and I would say Al had a lot of where he was sensitive to negative comments because he grew up with a lot of negative comments. And in reading this book, I went, oh, that's why you're that way. You know, and it's not him being him and saying, I'm him, I'm this person, and you're not going to be negative with me or something. It was understanding that that was a childhood wound, and I needed to speak into encouraging him and saying positive things to him, because he needed that from me. Just like he said I needed hugs and things like that, he needed positive affirmations.
Cool. So we look at with our couples we work with, we're getting them to look at their spouse's needs as sort of a ministry. Like we talked about growth and contribution being a key to fulfillment, and to make that spouse your ministry, the thing that you are contributing the most into. You guys started to have a mind shift as far as like, okay, I see what he needs and how can I meet those needs, and vice versa.
Right.
And I mean, our theory is that if you do that, if you have two people that are doing that simultaneously, then it's going to last.
Yeah.
Talk to that. I mean, has been your experience? I mean, is there anything missing from that theory?
Well, the only thing I would say when you were talking, I thought of this. I started applying what I did for you as my son. It was so easy to feed into your needs. It was so easy to take care of your needs because I adored you, and you didn't have any problems as far as I was concerned. So starting to look at that and say, well, that's what he needs, and I need to speak into those needs. I started associating taking care of a child. I think for parents, it's easy to take care of our children because it's just natural. It feels natural. It should feel natural to take care of each other and to speak into their needs.
That's so good.
Yeah, and I think I started becoming less selfish during those years, talking about that 10-year period. I started noticing what made her glow or what made her shine.
Yeah.
Versus, I don't know. Just for me, it was a big step just to notice what made her mood swings, or what added to her happiness, or what added to her sorrow. And a lot of times it was something I was doing or saying, and that was a real valuable time. And then when that period ended, our desert period ended, we started making decisions, and that's another line in the sand time of our life, looking back.
Cool. Well, I want you to talk to the husbands who I think a lot can relate to. What you said is key. You started noticing. I mean, we talk about that in our awareness section, but noticing, becoming aware of, and then, understanding and really like, okay, once you see something, now you might need to, again, grow as an individual to say, okay, I don't necessarily have the skill or the know-how, the knowledge, the wisdom to serve that, but I notice it. So what do I need to acquire? So, I mean, did you go through that process?
I don't know if I'm being real specific to answering your question, but I remember during that time being a typical guy, and I'm an average guy, so had to have a job, had to have a career. If I saw a need, I would go to school to learn that particular need for that segment of my job. I was always going to classes to learn more, and yet relationship-wise or loving-wise, there was no classes or things. So just for a guy, a typical guy, an average guy, to notice somebody else, the closest person in my life, starting to notice that I'm affecting them the way I do was a big step as a man. Mm-hmm. And then saying, I need to improve that. Mm-hmm. Where do I go to learn the skills to do this? And I was 40-ish years old. Mm-hmm. So I'm late bloomer maybe, but wherever that occurs for a man, I think it's important. We focus a lot on the outside to make our home better, but inside the walls of our house, we just assume we know it all. Mm-hmm. And I did not know anything. Mm-hmm. So around our 20th year or so, I really started focusing on her. Mm-hmm. Everything else, I made everything else hunky-dory. The job was going good, career was going good, sports had always been well. And now, what can I do in my new awareness? And I give God credit for that, making this dummy more aware.
I think what he's saying too is real key here. We individuals, doesn't matter if we're in a marriage or not, mm-hmm. we have kind of it's easy at work. You just know what you need to learn, mm-hmm. you do it. You know what you need to do. You don't always like doing what you do, but you do it because it's necessary. Mm-hmm. In a marriage, I think sometimes we walk through that door of our house and we just go, I don't want to try right now. Mm-hmm. I don't want to make any effort. I just want to veg. You know, you come home from work and you just want to veg. Yeah. And it's important. I think it's important to be able to take some veg time. Sure. But I think it's important to really look at each other and how can I improve this person's life. And I would put our marriage up against any marriage, mm-hmm. because he makes me happy and other people notice. There's so many times where people will come up to us and think that we're dating. And, you know, it's only because we're so focused on each other and what can we do to make that person happy, mm-hmm. that helps that relationship. More important than that, the job is the gravy. It's like you learn how to make this person happy. It makes you a stronger person. And then you can go out and conquer the world because you got this stable partnership that gives you energy to go out and face the world. Mm-hmm.
Having that foundation makes it easier to go out there and conquer the world.
Yeah. Problems at work? Not problem, because mm-hmm. I've got this thing at home.
Yeah. Well anchored.
Yeah.
So I want you you just both brought up really powerful things I know that people listening need more on. One is that you got the guy who starts noticing, and I wonder if you have any more advice there, like, okay, yeah, I realized that I'm causing all this pain with my wife for the first time. I'm, not as perfect as I thought I was, and, help, lifeline. Where do I go? What do I need? Like, what advice do you have for that guy?
Looking back, I always made myself happy. That was easy to do, and I had a lot of experience of that, especially in my baggage that I had as a kid. I depended on myself, so I could always depend on myself, always count on myself. The realization that I could really positively affect this other person made me start every day. It's been quite a time now. Pretty consistent. What can I do to make her happy today?
Yeah, that's another attitude shift. I like it.
And again, I give a lot of credit to God in that, and I talk to him about it often.
Get some advice.
You know, since you're her father, what can I do to make your daughter happy today? And that, if I start the day that way, it's just there all day long.
That's good.
I'm not saying it's 100% successful, because the reality is there, but the awareness has changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
And in this age and stage, I like what she said. We do get spoken of a lot in circles that we hang out in, that they're like kids now.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's exactly.
we crave each other. We do. I
That's
just
awesome.
crave being with her.
Cool. I want to come back to that because I think the people that come to Marriage Architects, the couples that are seeking our help, are particularly interested in, hey, the state of monogamy, the state of relationships, the state of marriage seems to be in shambles. And look at that couple over there. What the heck did they do right? I want what they have, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus years from now. I want that. And so that's why I wanted to have you guys on the show so you could speak to that. So let's come back to that. And then I want to go back to something you said that, again, I think both husbands and wives deal with that. I come home and I want to veg. And then there's that, in a sense, that could be the root of their issues. Like they perform, they do everything they need to do for outside, and you might even have a husband or a wife looking at their spouse and saying, you do all this stuff that looks amazing for other people. I hear you talking on the phone to that person, and you hang up, and with me you're a jerk. And you deal with that, I'm in my comfort zone, I don't have to try here, attitude, and that can kill it. So you said you realized that, or there was something there. Can you expand on it, the advice that you would have for those people?
One of the things that you said, you're talking on the phone and you're really, really nice to that person on the phone, and then you turn around and you're back in a fight, or you're saying something angry to somebody in the house. Mm-hmm. And people say, I can't control my anger. Yes, you can. You do it all the time. Mm-hmm. You can present to the world one face and then relax, because those people don't bother. They don't matter. Mm-hmm. They should matter more. And then you present the other face, and you have control over that. Mm-hmm. To say that you don't have control over how you say things is wrong. Mm-hmm. You just have to put some thought pattern into it when you're on the phone or presenting to the world. And that's just,
I could hear somebody saying, well, I'm not being my real self out there in the world, and then when I get home I just want to be my real self. But then, the spouse to that person's like, well, can I please have the not real self?
Yeah. So what's the motivation?
Yeah.
The motivation for the world is that you want to look like the good guy. So you don't want to look like the good guy to your family?
There it is.
I think on that topic, all of us have an ugly side.
Oh, yeah.
We just have to learn to accept that ugly side of our spouses. It's not that bad.
Well, I don't know about accept, but you just, people are a certain way, and you make a choice to say, that's something I want to talk to them about, or that's something that's a little bit of an annoyance, but I can deal with that. Mm-hmm. What's your bottom line, or that's not the word I want.
What will you tolerate?
Yeah, but that's not it either. Sorry. I lost my train of thought. Go on. Put a pause here.
Well, for instance, now, two retired folks, you like to be busy nonstop.
Yeah.
I'm good with doing nothing for a long time.
And I've accepted that, yeah.
We've adapted, but
Yeah.
it rubs us, I can say, why don't you sit down for a while? And you say, why don't you get up and do something for a while? So that's just a current difference between us. And I admire you for all the stuff you do.
So there have been stages. So our first stage, I would say, was selfish, and then was trying to find the right way to do this. Mm-hmm. And then there was a stage where we did everything together as a family. And in fact, one of my favorite things was we went to school and took a class together. and
College level class,
and sat on different sides of the room.
Not letting anybody know we were married.
And I could watch this person that I fell in love with interacting with other people. So it was observing and seeing how they are with other people and remembering that's what you fell in love with. And then now we're going through a stage where he's busy golfing. So he's back to the athletics that he had when we were first married.
Full circle.
And I was so resentful sometimes of what he was doing because it wasn't with me.
In the first 7-year period?
Yeah.
And how's it different now?
So I am more assured and fulfilled in his desire. I mean, he said the word crave. His craving of me. I know that I crave to be with him. I would rather be with him than anybody else. But do I have fun doing other things with other people? Yeah. Does he crave to be with me? Can he enjoy being with other people? Yes. And it's okay. It's okay. And that wasn't okay when we were first married because, first of all, I was immature, but everything else. Now his golf is primary. He has to golf almost every day, but I know it's not more important than me.
Exactly.
Okay, so that gets us into a whole nother realm and really good stuff. I mean, in our attraction phase, we talk about there needs to be, besides we talk about, in attitude and awareness and acceptance, we talk about creating this intimacy. But then there's this paradox of, for attraction, you have to see your spouse on the other side of the room interacting with other people to be like, oh yeah, that guy's pretty hot, right? You have to have this distance, which is the opposite of intimacy and closeness, right? To have attraction, and it's a weird paradox. So you beautifully described that. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, I would, because you're making me remember 14 years old, first day of English class in high school, from across the room, my jaw dropped. I still look at her that way when she went into the room. It makes me emotional, but that's the truth. I don't want to ever lose that.
Don't do that.
We were going to go there. But I mean, that's especially looking back, that draw was powerful then. I love and cherish that it's powerful today.
Yeah. So somehow that you never lost that, or maybe times have come and gone, but you've got that still after 47 years. Tell people why, how. Like, yes, we want that. How do we get that? How do we keep that?
And when I'm looking at you that way.
Yeah. It's remembering why you fell in love.
Yeah.
And then letting them be a separate person. I think a lot of what we talked about in the very early stages of our marriage, I mean, what we've talked about today, if I look at that, it's not letting that person be who they are.
When in that first stage, you're saying?
Yeah, well, first and second stage for us, it was, I don't want you to be that person. I want you to be the person I want to be. Who did you marry? Or
that
who
person.
That person. What about that person made you fall in love with them and attracted you? It's still there. Just search it out and find it. And that's what we've done, I think. People are always looking at us and going, you guys are the marriage. You guys are the good marriage. And it's not that we're together constantly. It's that when we're apart even, we talk about the other person. I know we do, right?
Yeah.
I know.
And that's, with the subject we're on, never, I think we've been really good at this. Never talk negative about each other to other people, ever. Totally unacceptable. And that was one of the decisions we made early on.
Plus which, when you hear from somebody else, I heard what your husband said about you, or I heard what your wife said about you, it means more than if you heard them say it directly to you.
Wow.
Because they were honoring you to somebody else. So I think that's one of our things, honoring each other in any context that we're in.
And I always loved the subject when I learned about self-talk, especially even during those 7 years. I would think to myself, gosh, she's looking good, or God, I really love her. That was in my head. I was saying it to her a million times. She never heard it. So we also learned when we have that self-talk, say it.
To let it out.
So now I'm probably sickening and, hey, you're looking hot. I mean, I think it now. She knows every time I think, and sometimes it's way too much probably. But that's positive self-talk. Just share it.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get to the next stage and say, I don't want to hear about it anymore. But I don't think
with
so.
That.
Yeah. You told me once, don't tell me again. No.
Okay. So it's not redundant to think it and then say it. Okay. Got it. Making a note.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's a good way to say that.
But she would say, "You never say you love me." I go, "Well, I said it a million times today in my brain." So it's important to get those thoughts out.
Especially if you have somebody who's a words of affirmation, even more important.
Yeah.
But that said, I always think everybody needs words of affirmation. Everybody. So there was. So I want to kind of. We're coming towards to the end. Whoa, we're a little more time than I thought. But I do want to wrap it up with this concept that just kind of came out, which is contrasting. I heard you contrasting when you first got together and somewhere, let's just say now and then, right? And there's a lot of time and stuff in between, but when you first got together and 48 years this year later, you said back then you wanted that person to change. The person that was attractive to you in the first place, you get married and you're like, why are they all these things?
Yeah.
And it's frustrating, and you're not accepting it anymore, and you're not allowing them the freedom to be who they are. Now you have come full circle, and the reason I believe that other people look at you and see this, whatever it is, like whatever they have, I want it, right? Is because you're comfortable with that autonomy part of your relationship. You guys are individuals who, despite being individuals, whole yourselves, love to get together and pour into each other and meet each other's needs. And that's where I want to kind of wrap up this episode on, and just get your thoughts on what it is. So, okay, I think the listeners hearing, okay, I get it, right? That makes sense. Now, how do I do that? Because right now I can't stand all these things about this person. Maybe they did attract me eventually, but now they're freaking annoying. How do we get there to the place where these guys, Al and Jan, are at? What do you have for them?
Go ahead.
I think the example of the going to school together and watching him interact with somebody other than me. What do I admire about him? I said it at first. Went into the marriage looking for what was wrong. Now I think I look and observe and see what I love about him, what I admire about him, what I honor about him. And sometimes I even observe what I don't like, but I know that's him. I may talk to him about it later and say, you were kind of a jerk with that person or something. I might say that. And then he can take that from me and grow in a different way.
And it's so you're talking about the behavior, but not that you're not accepting the person. Right.
And marriage is probably the best place in the world to grow and become your better person. I kind of said that with I know that I have this, when I was working still, I know that I have this solid base of this person that adores me and wants the best for me, and then I can go out and be wonderful in the world. So keeping that in mind, that I want to look for what I adore in him, remind myself constantly, that's who I want to stay married to. That's who I admire. That's my best friend. that's the person I look to for support and wisdom. And not that he always has all the answers. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'll tell him, I don't need an answer. But that's, I think, looking for the positive and observing who they are with other people. Because if you can't remember, you might be at a point in your life, in your marriage, where all you see is the negative. And you have to turn that around and start looking at who they are with those other people, and not saying, well, they can be nice to that other person because it's not me, or they're not vegging at home. Mm-hmm. But looking at who they are and then letting them know that's what you admire in them. And I think people respond to when you tell them, this is what I think is great about you. They want to do that more.
Yeah, that's so true.
Well, my greatest aha moment was the realization that I'm imperfect. She's imperfect.
You're still struggling with that, aren't you?
But there are two imperfect people trying to make a perfect marriage. That was such a lesson for me. So when you get that understanding, I'm expecting this imperfect person to make my marriage perfect, when it should be my responsibility. So when we start looking at each other as imperfect, and how do we make a perfect marriage together, start accepting the imperfections, improving the imperfections, looking for a source, and our source was God. But there's so many sources,
information out there
outside when we're imperfect, that we can learn from. So that was such a realization for me, that two imperfect people trying to make one perfect marriage it takes work. And as a typical guy, average guy again, I'm a fighter. That's guys like to fight. I always think back of a book. Just the title is enough to be said, but it was a good book. It's called Tender Warrior. I just like the title. Tender Warrior.
Yeah.
Really, the title really affected me. And I like that. I like to be thought of as a tender warrior. So.
And one other thing too is search out couples that exhibit what you want your marriage to, what you're striving for in your own marriage, not what you want your marriage to be, because sometimes that can be comparison and disloyalty and looking for what's wrong with your marriage. But some other marriages that reflect your marriage, get involved with those people. And the ones that don't have the good marriages, try to be an influence, but don't be involved to an intimate level.
Okay. Yeah. So choose your relationships and those other couples that you hang out with wisely. So what I'm hearing from you is, what was it?
Well, I can't help you there.
You were saying, let me go to yours. So for what I was hearing from yours is that you were talking about something that you said before is, kind of that self-talk or assumptions, evaluating the assumptions that are in your head. You first had the assumption like, marriage, you had some negative assumptions, but now your assumptions are, this is a pretty good guy, I love him, he does all these cool things, he's not perfect, but I know
neither am I.
That's the price of admission to ride this ride. I get this guy. And then what I was hearing from you is, gosh, I just blinked on it again.
His work that he puts into it, because I think that's what he was saying. He made decisions to, I don't know.
Well, the aha was two imperfect people.
Oh, this is what I want to say. So that you had humility enough to say, hey, we don't have to have all the answers. Maybe we weren't born just knowing how to do marriage perfectly. Where can we go to get more answers? Who can we look to? What books can we read? What resources are out there? So having humility, having evaluating your assumptions. Those are two takeaways I got from what you guys said. Acceptance. we're all about acceptance.
Well, we all, I mean, to say that you have all the answers, like you said, you weren't born with it, so you have to learn those qualities that you now have in that marriage. And it doesn't, a lot of people are saying, well, I've got this home with all these kids and it's crazy in our house, and I just hate it. And I always try to say, this is a season you're going through. You need to enjoy parts of it, enjoy that chaos for a while, because you're going to look back on it and love the chaos and wish, that it was still there. And then at the same time go, it's not there.
Breathe.
Yeah. But no, and having other influences in your life, people that have gone through it already, and having them say to you, you'll get through this. It's kind of a fun time, but you'll get through it, and they'll look back, you'll enjoy all the good parts, and then you're going to have this next section. And one of the things you said, what do you do from now? Start, if you're not already, start putting things together. You're going to be an empty nest sometime in the future. Yep. So start paying forward into your marriage.
Oh wow, that's good.
And what are you doing that you'll be able to keep doing after that season?
And
so
if the answer is nothing, you better find something.
Yeah. So I mean, we started date nights and date days.
Date days.
Way before you were gone. We did that on purpose because our marriage you're important, but our marriage is what's going to be there at the end.
Yeah, good.
I have fond memories of being dating this lady, and I have fond memories of being a newlywed, raising a son, having a family, coaching baseball, all those things. This empty nest time is awesome.
So there's something to look forward to.
Oh man!
If you invest in it.
Yeah, and it's a long time. We're in our 10th year of, 20 some years of empty nesting so far, and hopefully we got another 20 left. So it's a long period of life.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's it's like financial stuff. You think about I'm putting money away for future. If you don't do that in your marriage, you're going to get to the future and have no money or currency. What kind of currency do you have that's going to stay with you and be there to pull on and to draw from?
So you need a marriage 401k.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go with that.
Cool. Well, this has been rich. And I mean, is there anything else that you guys are burning to give advice, share experience?
Let's see. We have this awesome son, so that's part of it.
Well, during this talk, looking back, there's a lot of looking back. And I'm thinking, gosh, no regrets. I mean, I wish there wasn't a line in the sand 7th year, but there's no regrets how we took care of that.
Yeah.
So we've left a good legacy, and when the next age and stage is over, and look back, saying on the deathbed, or for instance, no regrets as far as this relationship here.
So on the no regrets and looking back on that 7th year, I read something about a tapestry in some culture. They actually weave in imperfections because it makes the whole tapestry, when you look at it, more interesting. And there's more to talk about when you look at that tapestry. And I really like that. That's a life. If you don't have some of those imperfections woven through, it's just a boring picture.
Wow.
It's the interesting things that draw you in.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap this up. So, Al and Jan Landis, thank you for being on this podcast, the Marriage Architects Connections podcast. And so our listeners are going to be tuning in, and if they want to reach out to you, is there any place where they could get more information from you guys?
Well, during golf games, I turn my cell phone off, so.
And you're always golfing, so.
we're always available. And in fact, we like to pass on anything we have to anybody who's interested.
We want marriages to work, so we love speaking into other marriages.
We like to be encouragers.
Yeah, I know if you Google Alan Jan Landis, you'll be able to find them somewhere on the internet. So, and get a hold of them if you want to talk to them or get some marriage advice or marriage mentoring. So, thank you guys. I appreciate it. This has been good.